Let's discuss the wider implications of Biden's visit on U.S. influence in the Middle East. We're joined by Andreas Krieg, who is a lecturer at the School of Security Studies at King's College in London. Andreas, thanks so much indeed for giving up your time. I suppose the reality is that no U.S. president can afford to be too idealistic in terms of his country's foreign policies.
Yes, that's definitely true. Unfortunately, though, after all the narrative that we've seen coming out of Washington, particularly out of the Biden campaign and then later on the Biden White House, we were expecting quite a little bit more on the transformational side, a little bit more on values and human rights. I think he's, even though, in the last couple of weeks when we knew this whole summit was going to take place, we knew that, we had to kind of hold our horses and be a bit more realistic about how much of that is going to happen in this transactional environment that is going on at the moment. We're still kind of disappointed because I think Biden very much fell short of even those very limited expectations. I think he's following in the footsteps of Donald Trump in many ways. There's a continuation of U.S. foreign policy. The themes that we see that, the Middle East is still important for oil and gas and energy seems to run through it. Authoritarians are still very important because they deliver oil, even if the U.S. is now a net exporter. But even on the oil issue, we haven't really seen much in terms of concessions. And I think the statements from Israel, as well as the statements from Saudi Arabia, don't really suggest that there has been any real progress made. And I don't see how any of this can be sold as a success back home by the Biden administration.
Yeah, I mean, look, Andreas, while you're talking there, we're seeing pictures of the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, standing with Joe Biden. And while the Israelis will be extremely happy, presumably, with how Biden's visit there went, how Mohammed bin Salman will presumably be ecstatic about doing a fist bump with the most powerful man in the entire world. He had some kind words for Mahmoud Abbas, but no action at all. Okay, some money for hospitals and stuff like that, but nothing in terms of Palestinian relations with the Israelis. He's basically saying, not now, Mahmoud, don't bother me.
No, exactly. This is where I think where he really fell short of any very limited expectations that people might have had. Him saying that he's a Christian but a Zionist at the same time, no calling out of any of the war crimes committed by Israel recently, not meeting with Shireen's parents in East Jerusalem, nothing that was in any way symbolic that would suggest that the United States would turn around and actually deliver on what most Democrats were even expecting to happen, like at least trying to revitalize the two-state solution in any way. None of that actually happened. On the contrary, I mean, if we're now moving, even the Saudis actually haven't made any major concession. There was a lot of expectation that the Saudis would now come around to kind of at least agree to some dialogue with Israel. But already the Saudis were saying, even a dialogue at this early stage, even an informal dialogue, is not something that we can commit to as long as Israel is not making any progress on the two-state solution. So here as well, the Biden administration hasn't laid any groundwork for the Israelis to make any concessions, and the Israelis don't feel like they need to make any concessions. They get what they want from Biden. They get what they want from the authoritarians such as the UAE or Bahrain in terms of concessions for those kind of authoritarians brushing aside all the rights of the Palestinians. So in that respect, Israel got everything it wanted. I think Saudi got what it wanted. But I don't see how Biden got anything that he wanted, even by very conservative expectations.
Don't you think that there's a lot that has been unsaid, though, especially in the last leg of this Middle Eastern tour? You're talking about the Saudis not wanting to make concessions, not wanting this rapprochement with the Israelis. Do you not think that this is the laying of the groundwork for the eventual signing by Riyadh to be a part of the Abraham Accords? I mean, just simply opening the airspace that the Saudis have now allowed, the airspace for Israeli planes to fly across that airspace that Saudi Arabia had for years and decades said, no, it's not going to happen.
Now, we have to consider, we have to understand this as a part of a wider framework of defense. And I think we will hear more about this as this summit is ongoing in Jeddah today, on defense cooperation, intelligence sharing, with a view to actually bolstering a defense partnership. I don't want to call it an alliance, but a partnership vis-a-vis Iran. And here we will see a lot more integration and cooperation between Saudi authorities and Israeli authorities to deliver security, to deliver defense. And that sort of cooperation is definitely going to increase, but it will not be formally announced at this at least at this stage. But, you know, it is a mild breakthrough. But again, it's not something where I think the Saudis are benefiting from it. The Israelis are benefiting from it. But the US hasn't really a role to play in this. I mean, this kind of bilateral back and forth, you know, we're seeing jets coming back and forth, flying from Tel Aviv to Saudi Arabia for months now. The Americans were only mildly involved in that. This is a bilateral undertaking between Saudis and Israelis, and that connection has, you know, existed for years and years. So expanding that is something that actually goes against what the Americans want, because in the end of the day, America still wants, especially the Biden administration, wants a JCPOA. And I think this sort of bilateral defense relationship between Saudi and Israel might actually undermine the JCPOA talks. So I'm not sure that is actually in the American interest.
Andreas, really, thank you so much. You've examined so many different issues there for us so expertly, of course. We wouldn't expect anything less. Andreas Krieg, take care.
Thank you.